Thank you, everyone. We slight delay on the start of the meeting, but we'll be underway shortly. Thank you. Just try again. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, just a slight delay on the start of the meeting, so just bear with us. Be with you in a couple of minutes. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this meeting of the Planning Policy Committee. Can I draw everyone's attention to page 3 within the agenda, which sets out details regarding fire safety instructions and the webcasting arrangements. In the event of a fire alarm sounding, please leave the building via the nearest exit and make your way to the assembly point located in the Market Car Park, adjacent to the Civic Suite building. Please do not return to the building unless given permission by council staff. For the benefit of those watching from home and those in the public gallery, members of the committee are seated in the front row, and all non-members of the committee in attendance are seated in the rows behind. Item number 1, apologies for absence. No apologies for absence have been received. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? There are none. Item 3, minutes of the meeting held on the 9th of July 2026. Are the minutes agreed, members? Thank you. Item 4, public questions on notice. Members, we have received 9 questions from members of the public, which have been circulated to you separately. Question 1 is from Richard Pryor, a resident. This question is to the Chairman of the Planning Policy Committee. I invite Mr. Pryor to read out his question.
Hello, can you hear me? Yeah, you can, yeah. This question relates to the evidence questions, and before I ask the question, I did ask the same question last meeting, but got an answer to a different question. So I do hope that this time the answer I get is to this question. Not a criticism of you, Neil, Chair, because I know you're given the answer to read out, but I just wanted to make that clear. The answers should relate to the questions, please. So moving on to my question. At the previous meeting of the Planning Policy Committee, it was reported that 11 key evidence reports required to complete the local plan were outstanding. As of today, with less than 1 month to go before the local plan must be finalised, ready for Regulation 19, how many of those 11 evidence bases are now fully complete and available for inclusion into the local plan process? And therefore, by default, how many key evidence bases are still outstanding? Please provide an answer which includes those 2 numbers. And I'd add also the names of those reports which are fully complete. And by complete, I have to define those as the full report from the provider, not a draft report. A report which has also been reviewed by this committee and approved by this committee, so therefore it's of the quality for inclusion into the local plan process. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. The update on the progress of evidence-based documents is set out with the Chair's report, paragraph 2.1. Since the writing of that report, I can confirm that draft of the viability assessment has also been received, and the reference group has had presentation on the next stage of the transport assessment, which will also be discussed at an all members briefing on the 3rd of September. I will also add that all the documents that you have listed has been circulated to members of the reference group who are also members of this committee. They are all in draft form and there is still some work to be done on all of the reports, and members of this committee are actively involved in assisting in improving the reports to make sure that they provide solid evidence for our local plan.
Thank you. Thank you. And that does answer the question. Thank you. Can I have my second question now?
Yes, Mr. Pryor, you can ask a supplementary question.
Thank you. Right, it relates to the first question. In December, I asked the then chair of this committee, Simon, who's here. Hello, Simon. Hi. I asked whether, after 11 years or more and over £2 million spent, if Rochford could still deliver a local plan we as residents could be proud of. I asked because much of the evidence required was missing, outdated, or being redone because it was out of date. Simon confidently assured me that necessary rigour was being put in, focus, resources brought in, a new project manager. It would be a challenge, but it would be done. That exchange is on the council's YouTube recording channel. Yet the previous administration began its year in May 2025 with 11 key evidence reports outstanding, and it ended the year 12 months later with the same 11 reports still outstanding. So any claim that the local plan was on schedule really doesn't bear any relationship with the truth. Today, as you've confirmed, many are still missing, they're not complete, they're just in draft form, and we have barely 3 weeks left to write the robust final plan that will be passed by our council and probably more importantly will withstand government scrutiny. At the last meeting, I asked where the risk register was, and I suggested it should be publicly available. To those that don't know, a risk register is a log of what could go wrong, what the implications would be, and how we could recover. Emma said there was a detailed risk register, but she would have to check with the monitoring officer if it could be made public. I heard nothing following that meeting, and to my knowledge, and please correct me if I'm wrong, nothing has been published publicly since. I've looked at the agenda pack for today's meeting, and again, I cannot see a risk register. Should we take from this that the risks with the local plan are too serious for the public to be shown? The council always talks about transparency with residents, so I ask again, can we be provided the full risk register, and what are the top 3 risks we currently face? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pryor. I can confirm that there is a risk register because I have seen it. But in relation to as to whether this is appropriate to be circulated at this time to the general public, I'll ask Emma to comment in relation to that. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so all members received a copy of the detailed operational risk register for the local plan, and we discussed that as part of one of the member reference groups. But that is not a document that can be made public, but there are the broad risks associated with the local plan in both the overall council strategic risk register and risks identified within the local development scheme, which is a project management document for the local plan, both of which are published online.
Thank you very much, Emma. Before we hear from the next person, it appears that the next 8 questions are all around the same subject. I have been advised that Mr. Biner has been appointed to represent everyone that has submitted a question. I would just like to confirm that I have asked the relevant officer to provide a written response in each case. This response will be sent out to you within 5 clear working days of the date of the meeting, and a copy will be sent to all members. Question 2 to 9 is going to be represented by Mr. Biner. Can you please read out your question?
Thank you. Yes, like you say, I'm here representing Wyburns area residents at the moment. We sent in the 9 questions.
Yes, I need you to be closer to the
Hello,
mic.
sorry,
That's
sorry,
better.
it wasn't
Thank
explained to me. Yes, I'm here representing Wyburns area residents today. And like you say, 9 questions were sent in all around a similar sort of topic. So basically, having reviewed the 2026 Greenbelt assessment, we have serious concerns about former Parcel 21, now divided into RA49, RA50, RA51 and RA52. The questions we have submitted tonight identify those concerns in detail, so I won't repeat them. They include missing physical features, questionable parcel boundaries, the treatment of existing containment, and whether land with materially different characteristics have been assessed together and effectively averaged. We recognise that LUC's assessment was undertaken under the previous MPPF. However, the local plan is moving forward now, and current National Greenbelt guidance says assessment areas should be sufficiently granular to identify variations in the contribution made by different areas of land. We therefore believe RA49, RA50, RA51 and RA52 need to be reviewed before this evidence is relied upon in progressing the local plan. We have particular concerns around Purpose A, preventing unrestricted sprawl, and increasingly Purpose D, preserving the setting and special character of historic towns. Our continuing research is uncovering a historic landscape here which appears to have been largely forgotten. Surviving earthworks and other features are now being investigated. And what is emerging could be very significant. It may not simply demonstrate that this land preserves the setting and special character of the historic town of Rayleigh. It could actually change our understanding of what that setting and special character are. Once the surviving earthworks have been dated and assessed by the archaeologist, if that evidence confirms our research is indicating, we will submit an evidence-based case for a strong contribution under Purpose D. We're not here tonight simply to criticise the assessment. We genuinely want to help. Between us at Wyburns Area Residents, we have maps, photographs, historic material, detailed knowledge of the physical landscape and emerging archaeology evidence that cannot always be captured through a desk-based assessment alone. We would welcome the opportunity to share that evidence and work constructively with the Council and LUC. So my question tonight is, will the Council give Wyburns Area residents the opportunity to sit down with the relevant officers and LUC, put our evidence directly before them and work constructively together so that any errors or omissions can be addressed and all the available evidence properly considered before the assessment of RA49, RA50, RA51 and RA52 is relied upon in progressing the local plan?
Thank you very much for your question. In relation to the year, all the questions received, they are very technical questions regarding the LUC methodology for the consideration of a single parcel. They have been sent to the LUC for the response, and can I suggest that we respond to each question as follows. Thank you for your detailed question. The Council has set on its own consultants. A written response will be sent in due course. In relation to your second part of your question, I would like to ask Emma in relation to the engagement and what would be our best response. Thank you.
Thank you. So just to pick up a point of fact, the Rochford local plan is being examined under the transitional arrangements, which means that it is examined under the MPPF 2024 rather than the MPPF which has just been published in the last few days. So that's just a point that the local plan will be examined under that previous MPPF, even though it has since been replaced. In terms of the engagement, it's really heartening to hear that work is happening. What I would suggest is that if that can be put together and sent to the Council as part of the Reg 19 consultation, then that allows both the Council to look at it, but also it allows the Independent Planning Inspector to look at it as part of the examination of the local plan. Unfortunately, we cannot commit to meeting one group about the Greenbelt Review, because then that would mean that we'd have to meet all groups about the Greenbelt Review, and I know that there are a lot of interested groups, and we just simply do not have the capacity to be able to do that at this time. But we'd be very happy to receive the information via email and everything you've got, and as I say, we can consider that as part of the Reg 19 consultation and through the examination.
Thank you, Emma. Now moving on to item 5. Oh, sorry. Yes, we have. Sorry, you have the opportunity of a supplementary question.
Sorry, I wasn't actually prepared for a supplementary question because no one told me I could have one. But basically, on that response, why on earth don't you want the residents to help you out preparing this assessment to make it stronger and robust for the local plan? Because at the moment, the methodology is just not being followed. I have evidence to show that it's not being followed and to show that the planning guidelines aren't being followed either. So surely it would make sense in everyone's interest to listen to the residents who have this knowledge and can evidence it, rather than the local plan being chucked back at you because it's not correct. So why would you not want the help of the local residents that are offering it?
I believe you've had the response to that in the previous answer. Item 5, Chairman's report. The report begins on page 15. Residents who ask a question, you can stay for the meeting or you can leave if you wish to. Right, back to the agenda, item 5, Chairman's report. The report begins on page 15. Do members have any questions on this item? I do not see anyone indicating. Item 6, report on Regulation 18 consultation. The report begins on page 29. Jonathan Coulter introduced this item.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairman. This report presents the findings of the Regulation 18 consultation on the emerging Rochford local plan, which ran for 6 weeks between 9th of February and 24th of March this year. The consultation was supported by a wide range of engagement programme, including district-wide publicity, 5 public drop-in events attended by approximately 300 people, a live webinar and direct engagement with statutory consultees. People could respond online by email, by post or through the paper forms, helping to make the consultation accessible through a range of methods. The consultation generated a significant response with more than 38,500 individual representations received through over 2,300 submissions, alongside petitions and response from statutory consultees, infrastructure providers, neighbouring authorities, parish and town councils, developers and community organisations. The strongest theme was infrastructure. Many respondents raised concerns about the existing and future capacity of the road network, schools, healthcare services, drainage, utilities, and community facilities. A recurring message was that the future growth should be infrastructure-led, with greater certainty about how necessary improvements would be funded, phased, and delivered. Closely related concerns were raised about traffic congestion and highway capacity, including the cumulative effects of development and the need for better public transport, walking and cycling provision. Other prominent themes included the overall scale and distribution of housing growth, the protection of the greenbelt and countryside, maintaining separation between settlements, and the effect of development on local character. Many respondents also advocated prioritising brownfield land wherever possible. Flood risk, drainage, water supply, biodiversity and habitat protection were also raised frequently, with respondents emphasising the importance of robust evidence and effective mitigation. Site-specific responses largely reflected these same concerns, providing valuable local information to inform the continuing assessment of potential sites. Since the consultation closed, work on the local plan has continued. Officers have been reviewing the representations, progressing the evidence base and engaging with statutory consultees, infrastructure providers and neighbouring authorities. Where possible, the issues raised have already informed updates to the emerging local plan and supporting evidence. This work will continue as the Regulation 19 plan is finalised. The recommendation this evening is that the committee notes the Regulation 18 committee consultation feedback report. Thank you.
Do members have any questions on this item? Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chairman. So it was quite evident that the strongest voice came from within Rayleigh, which I was extremely proud of our residents in Rayleigh for all their efforts. So we received 38,592 representations and at least 2,327 submissions. The report acknowledges, as Mr. Quilter has said, about the major concerns about infrastructure, greenbelt and individual development sites. But where specifically has that public opposition resulted in a proposed site being removed, reduced or materially changed? If officers cannot identify examples, how do we demonstrate to our residents that this consultation has influenced the plan rather than simply recording their objections before proceeding NOA?
Jonathan.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Newport, for the question. So certainly it's fair to say for any local plan process, now clearly we want to engage with the public and obviously other consultees. In terms of the position as of now, obviously no decisions have been made on the Regulation 19 plan. That is to obviously come forward before members. So in terms of being able to confirm what sites may or may not be in the plan, that's obviously to come forward in a future meeting. In terms of the issues raised, obviously we need to understand what the content of that is, and this applies to any representation. It's the content of what's been said rather than just purely the number. The number is very helpful because, as you say, it does indicate the strength for concern, and that's certainly very much noted, obviously, by officers. We obviously have a number of other considerations we need to bring into the process that inform a local plan, mainly obviously relating to evidence, but also notwithstanding those statutory consultees as well that look after a number of the, particularly around infrastructure provision as an example. So I think in terms of the answer to that, very much a case that obviously the work is to come forward to the committee and to full council, and that will be setting out obviously the approach that's been finalised at that stage.
Thank you, Councillor Belton.
Thank you. It was just a simple one. I did raise this at the members' briefing we had about the weight given to petitions, and we were going to try and understand how that was captured, because I personally handed in one that was largely from Hockley and Ashenden and Hockley Ward. There was other people in it of 1,750 signatures. Just understanding how weight is carried, and are these households or people? Because we've got households of 8 people, for example. Does that go in as one respondent? I think the answer was yes to that. But is there any way of capturing those numbers to understand?
Jonathan, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Belton. So, yeah, in terms of petitions, we do record them as a petition, and there's a lead signatory to that. However, we do also record the number of the number of signatures that are applied to that petition, so that they will obviously be noted on that basis. So it's not ignoring the strength of feeling, obviously, that's put behind that, so they have the same weights. Obviously, where we've received, as an example, template letters that have been submitted, they are obviously recorded as individuals because they've been submitted by that individual. Apologies, what was the other question? So it was in terms of whether respondents are households or...
Precisely, yeah.
Yeah.
So the petitions, but they don't form part of this table, do they? The figure 4, the petition numbers aren't within there; they're a separate.
Yes, I mean
That
we
one's classed as one respondent. For the
we have noted it in the
table.
in the committee report as one side of it. We have noted obviously the number of respondents to that petition. In respect of the respondents, they are individuals, so that may well comprise a number of individuals of one household, but that each individual is recorded as such in those figures. Obviously, the individual responses in time will be made available, so they'll be able to be viewed and obviously seen on the consultation portal on that basis. So yeah.
Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chair. In light of the, on page 32, 1.14, with regards to the responses that were received around concerns over Greenbelt, I have to say I'm a little bit disappointed in the way that residents were dismissed tonight on that. My experience of residents groups recently has been that they're very well versed in all the ins and outs of the planning system, and they are getting very much more so as they are getting more concerned about this sort of thing. I think it would have been probably a little bit more kinder to them to at least have said that we would explore ways to have interacted with them. I do recognise that there are problems with capacity. I understand that, but to just say send in your email, well, even members know that we are having problems getting responses from emails. So it would have been good to have actually seen some way in which we could have explored that resource.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. I'm sure you're aware of the, we were already have discussed the timescales that we're dealing with. And residents and residents group do have the opportunity of participating in the process. And that was pointed out by our officer. I don't know if anyone else wants to add any further to that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, obviously we're working at an incredibly tight timescale here, so we're working on government timescales which are incredibly short. And also, I think there is a fairness point that if you allow that for one group, you should allow that for all other groups. And we know there are a lot of groups who have those similar concerns. That's absolutely not to dismiss the work that all those resident groups are doing. It's just that if we can get that through the Regulation 19 consultation, it gives it a status in the local plan examination as well, which is really crucial because the inspector then sees that work as well.
Councillor Belton, is this related to the same thing that Councillor Reeves?
Slightly, yeah. But I think it's important because all I want to say is I completely recognise not meeting with groups. I think that would be impossible. It would be an impossible task and managing expectations wouldn't be right. I'm a little bit confused and I was going to see where to bring it up. We just spoke next door about where there's fundamental challenge, we would do that pre-Reg 19, that it could come through members. You asked the question yourself, Chairman, about where we've got fundamental concerns. We would challenge that pre-Reg 19 so that the draft version that goes out for consultation is the best possible version of the draft. You then just told a group who are clearly well organised that their only way in is via the Reg 19, which is at odds with what we just discussed as members. So that confused me slightly. I am going to be submitting all of their evidence immediately, as I said, now that I've got the confirmation of the route. And I do expect it to be looked at pre-Reg 19, as will other members who also have challenge. But let's get the best out of these consultations and let's get the best version of the consultation in public. And I think that was something we all just agreed on next door.
Yes, I'll just remind Councillor Belton that in the question that was asked, the questioner specifically asked for engagement with council officers and the consultants who produced the Greenbelt report. That was what they were specifically asking for, That is not something which we can do. Yes, you are right in relation to people coming through, members of the council, and we can filter what is relevant. That is still appropriate approach.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that was not what was said, though. That's going to be the issue. But as you've confirmed, you're going to be sending written responses. So maybe it's worth saying to these people that we've heard their technical responses and it will be shared in advance of Reg 19, because that is what we just agreed as members.
Emma, if that is appropriate.
Yeah, if it comes through members, yeah.
Is there anyone else? Councillor Newport?
Thank you, Chairman. Chairman, in light of Councillor Eaves and what Councillor Belton has just said about residents groups and getting answers to these responses, I really hope they are supportive of the next item to give the best opportunity of getting those responses back, because I do fear that within this process and the timetable that we are currently working to, consultants just are overwhelmed and we won't get those responses in that time scale. So if there is any opportunity of lengthening the process with agreement of the government, which won't impact housing numbers, etc., I think we should go for it. So I hope they're supportive, because I think it really will give that opportunity if we do get the extension.
Thank you, Councillor Newport. Just mention to you and to all others, please make sure you're speaking very closely to the microphone, because not everything is being picked up. So, but thank you. Councillor Linden.
Thank you. Firstly, obviously, I had my hand up before Councillor Belton and Councillor Newport, so what I'm about to say has obviously already been covered. But I think the response to the residents just there could have been an awful lot clearer. What they actually asked for was, they've got a lot of evidence put together. There is 4 or 5 resident groups out there who are incredibly well formed, who I've been telling the council about. They're well funded, well represented, both legally and professionally, and I think we should start listening to what they have to say and find them a vehicle to be able to use to get to our officers, so that we can get back to these people who have got a wealth of information. And the response that I would have given to that particular group was, thank you for your information. Yes, we would really appreciate you sending in your technical details. We will review it and then we'll respond to you in due course. I do believe the residents themselves misunderstood actually what we were trying to say to them, because they've gone away thinking that we've negated what they're saying, when in fact actually what we did do was listen to what they had to say, appreciated their input, but we could have put it back a different way. And as Councillor Belton and Councillor Newport said, we need to find an avenue so that we can make sure that this information, after all, it is the residents who matter, and they are pitched in the local areas, and there's various different groups, and we need to start listening to what they have to say. So if we could find that avenue how we can get that information firstly into us and then back out to them, it would be appreciated.
Thank you, Councillor Linden. Your point is well put, and perhaps the matter could have been dealt with slightly better, but we are where we are. We have pointed out there is a means and a method now to allow information from these groups to be filtered into the process on top of the consultation process as well. Any of our officers got any comment?
Can I come back on that? Could we clearly state that on our web page, the council web page, the route that people can actually use? I know it's already there, but if we can highlight it, make it clear, and make a note of it, particularly at this very important time. Thank you.
Emma, you got any comments relating to that?
Thank you, Councillor. If I could, sorry about that. If I could just come in, I just remind everybody, and I totally hear and understand everything you are saying, Councillor Linden, but as it stands at the moment, the timescale that we are having to operate in is incredibly short, and it always has been. That it's not something that officers are determining, that's something that central government have told us we have to do. So whilst we would happily like to go and engage directly with every single group and individual if we could, we are not able to do that. We have to do it through the route that we've just discussed, which is if there's specific issues that groups have and they wish to feed it through their ward councillor, and the ward councillor is happy to feed that in, we can look at it. Otherwise, it will have to come in through the Regulation 19, and that's not undermining any of the efforts or fantastic collaboration that the local groups have put together. It's simply a matter of time, and that time is not determined by councillors of this council or officers. It is a central government point, and I'm not being political on that point either.
Sorry, can I just... Thank you. That is exactly what I said. Not that they write into the council, that they actually write emails to their ward councillors. All of our details are on Rochford District Council website, all of our contact details. What I'm saying is, can we make it clear that they need to write an email to their local ward councillors, and we will take that and make it clear that we will then take that forward to the committee. Thank you.
Yes, we can put something on the website, but I'll make the point again about timescales being very short. And the last thing I want is people to bombard their ward councillors with many, many points, only to find they cannot be dealt with before Regulation 19. So I just wanted to, we just need to manage that, Councillor Linden.
Sorry, but by sending by sending the information to us, we will be able to filter and probably answer a lot of those questions for ourselves, for our residents, on your behalf. So it'll only be the really technical ones that will have to come to you. I think Councillor Belton referred to that earlier in respect of that is the best avenue, and we have got a lot of information which we can help and abide these people with. Thank you.
Absolutely, yeah, happy with that point, as long as councillors are happy to take on that role.
Is there anyone else? Members, this report is to be noted only. No, yeah, noted. Thank you. Item 7, proposed letter to MHCLG on local plan timetable. The report begins on page 1 of the supplementary agenda, which was circulated today. The reasons for the request to include this report as an urgent item include the exceptionally compressed programme arising from the 31st of December 2026 submission deadline, the limited period available for member consideration of the completed evidence base, the councillors' proposed incorporation of a further full council decision following the Regulation 19 consultation in response to recent legal developments, and the need to consider significant strategic cross-boundary matters with Southend-on-Sea City Council. Unless and until an extension is formally agreed, the Council will continue to progress the local plan on the basis of the existing submission deadline. Do members have any questions on this item? Councillor Belton.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a few. I'll ask the fundamental questions and then I'll give some comment. First off, what has changed since last week? Last week, the plan was on track. It remained on track.
Councillor Belton, I can answer that one very straightforward. It was the decision by Southend Council, and also it involved members of the Conservative group on Southend Council,
That wasn't my question.
which helped with the information which helped create the decision. That's changed the situation.
Couple of things. There's no decision been taken, it's a recommendation. Southend's asking for a delay of 1 month. They've published their Reg 19. I'm asking what has changed in base of our work. Last week, we could deliver a plan by the 31st of December to give our district some defence. Now, we need 2 months to make that happen. So I'm asking what has changed, not what are other councils doing. I know you're speaking to councillors at Southend. I know our leaders from Braintree, so probably paying interest to what their council's doing. Yes, they've both asked for an extension. This is Rochford District Council. We were working to the 31st of December and we could deliver it by the 31st of December last week, and now we can't. So my first simple question is, what has changed in regards to what Rochford can and can't deliver? And then if we start there, and then I'll go on. Thank you.
Thank you. Emma, you want to talk about the legal aspects that have been mentioned?
Yeah, absolutely. We are still working as it stands, and no decision today will change the fact that we still have to work to the 31st of December 2026 deadline. And that means that we're submitting a plan to council on the 23rd of December. We can't move that date because otherwise we don't give ourselves enough room at the other end after, assuming that it is approved there for consultation. We've got to do a 6-week consultation. That doesn't end until November, and then you've got to make another council decision. Got to process all the reps, make sure we've looked at them appropriately and get them in by the 31st of December. So that remains the timetable that we are working to as it stands. But we are aware that there is a lot of evidence coming out quite quickly, and members have expressed a desire to make sure that we have a proportionate and robust governance framework that members can feel like they've got the appropriate opportunity to scrutinise those reports before those decisions are taken at council. So that is part of the reason for the proposed change. That's the sort of, at this stage, we're then suggesting that we have a similar period before you're taking the council decision again in December, or if it was later, so that you can, again, robustly and transparently consider the responses that come back to the Reg 19 consultation before you make a decision to submit the local plan to the Planning Inspectorate.
You have other questions?
Yeah, just a couple of questions, and I'd like to listen to the debate if it's okay. So from what I just heard there, it sounds like members have asked for this delay. Is that the case? Have members requested that we ask a delay, or is this advice from officers? And then my final question is around the draft Reg 19 that should be coming to planning policy before it goes to full council. So on table 14, it would now go to full council in October, if I'm not mistaken, ready to go to consultation. But if we're sticking to the current timetable, because it's unrealistic to think government are going to give us a response in a matter of days, we've got to have a draft Reg 19 published within the next couple of weeks. Even though you've pushed planning policy back 6 days, we're still less than 2 weeks away, if I'm not mistaken, from needing that published. So that the hardest piece of work, arguably, has got to be done regardless in the next 2 weeks, because government aren't going to give us a get out. So does that still happen? Because planning, it's not clear. So if I could have those 2 questions asked, Chairman, if that's okay, then I'd like to listen to the debate.
Emma, please.
Yeah, so the Planning Policy Committee on the 16th of September stays because, as I say, we have to keep working towards that 23rd of September date. So you're right, that does mean that we are publishing papers within a short amount of time. The proposed letter that's in Appendix A does stress it stresses our desire to get a quick response from the Secretary of State on that letter, but that is no means a guarantee. You know, they work to their own timetable, but we can stress that, and we officers can stress that with MHCLG civil servants as well. But yeah, there is no guarantee we get that before the 16th of September. So we have to publish, and we have to carry on. But if there is a positive letter between the 16th and the 23rd, then that, for example, gives you an opportunity to make sure that, again, you're happy with all the evidence that we've been talking about, potentially make changes between the 2 documents because it gives you a bit of time to do that. But yeah, that's the sort of place in terms of the timetable. If the timetable was, if the letter was accepted, we've put a proposed timetable within the report. That's not in the letter, so that would be for us to determine. But we've suggested that that would potentially be able to move council into October and then consultation through October and November and into early December. So hopefully that's cleared on the timetable. In terms of the question around the request for this, I think this is, Councillor Hookway talked about some of the reasons why this is coming forward now at the beginning, and we've been listening to members at the member reference groups that we've been having and the challenges that you have been giving to us as officers about making sure that you have had the time to read the evidence base that we're putting forward for you.
Thank you, Emma. Councillor Newport.
Thank you, Chairman. Basically, in a nutshell, I hear what the Director of Place is saying about this, and I am supportive of requesting an extension if we can get one, because I don't feel that the evidence base and the drafts have had proper scrutiny and will have had proper scrutiny and had the opportunity for us to push back on certain aspects with consultants and to give more time to actually create that robust evidence base where we're not simply just brushing things through because we're working to the timetable. Because right now, I've made it very, very clear to all members, I'm not happy with many elements of the evidence base. And if we look at the timetable, in July 2025, we said in the report, it said IDP summer 2025. We're now into autumn 26 and we've only just received it. So, and that's really pushed our backs against the wall on this. And the IDP is probably one of the biggest evidence bases and the most important to many of our residents. And if we don't get that right, then our residents, they are expecting better. The previous plan failed. They are expecting a better plan, and we should do everything in our power to make sure that we deliver the very best for them. And I'm supportive for that reason. If we can get some more breathing space and we can actually have more time to scrutinise and push back, I'd be more than happy.
Thank you, Councillor Newport. Just for clarity, the timetable for the reports was an inherited timetable from the previous administration. And early on, the question did arise as to whether it was possible to meet the timetable. So there was discussions at the very beginning of this administration as to what would be the best process. And one of the options that then was discussed, would it be appropriate to ask for an extension? At that time, it was decided that it probably wasn't the best option, and the best option was to carry on with the timetable that we had and do our best. However, circumstances has changed as we've gone through this process, and it has been a matter this is why this has come forward. So I don't know if Emma would like to make any comment in relation to any of that. No. Okay. Thank you. Councillor Linden.
Thank you. Ever since I've been a councillor, we've been talking about the local plan. I'm not here to point score, to play the game of saying they did it wrong, you did it wrong. We're here to make a difference. We're here to bring the local plan together. delaying it by 2 months when we delayed it by so many years, to me, is neither here nor there. What does concern me is the fact that, one, if we get a negative response, then we've still got to have completed, and what Director of Places said, that is still the aim to get it completed. But something that else which concerns me is we've never had, to my knowledge, such a rising of professional, well-funded residence groups as we've got today. And I keep on talking about every opportunity. We're seeing that these particular groups are technically, professionally, financially minded to make sure that we get the best for our area. If that means that we delay by another 2 months, we have got to listen to these people. We have got to take on board what they're doing. The fact that they've got expertise within their ranks who can sit there, who can go through those papers. There's a lot of professionals, there's a lot of retired people there. They're actually going with a fine toothpick, going through all of these reports that have come through and are in the public domain now, and they're coming out with some very valid points. I'm sitting between a rock and a hard place at this moment in time, and until I hear the end of this debate, I'm not quite sure which way I can actually go. But what concerns me is I work in a commercial, I work in an industry, that they see a crack, they're going to smash this door open wide, and those developers are out there waiting to come through. Are we going to get an avalanche of developers saying, oh, they've delayed it by another 2 months, we'll go for them? They will take every opportunity. I'm really concerned at this moment in time. If we delay, that might happen. If we don't delay and we get it wrong because we haven't looked at the facts that have been so slow in coming, I don't care who it was, I don't care about the blame. We've got them now, and we need to consider exactly what is in those reports. I would prefer to wait 2 months to get it right, but then risk the fact that you got the developers coming forward. But we need to get this right, and we need to make sure that if we do get an agreement, if we do write a letter and we do get an agreement, that is it. We need a absolute rock solid date that we are going to put this forward for the sake of our residents. We're only here for our residents, and I am so warmed. They're not, excuse me, but they're not tree huggers from the old. These are really well organised professional groups that have come forward. We need to start listening to them, and if that means an extra 2 months, if we're allowed that, then I don't know. As I said, I'm stuck in a rock and a hard place. Please, fellow members, help me out on this one.
Thank you, Councillor Linden. Yes, I think, we've had potentially 2.5 years where speculative development could come. We're asking for a period of 2 months to make sure that we can produce a plan which is solid. I don't think that the risk is too great. The only risk is that we might not be given the time, and therefore we are left back to the original timetable. But we're prepared for that. As Councillor Newport has pointed out, there are a lot more benefits in making sure that we scrutinised and are in a position to look at the evidence base much more closely and make sure we get it right. Councillor Reeves.
Thank you, Chair. I think yourself and Councillor Linden have hit the nub of the whole debate on the nail on the head here. Risk is the central factor here. Risk. The government have made it very clear in the past that this council is under the microscope. They've made that very clear very many times. We've tried to address that by inviting the Secretary of State down here multiple times. He's never even had the courtesy to reply to our invites. It underlines to me that this government are waiting for an opportunity to jump on us. This is the kind of thing that has happened, and we're seeing is happening around the country at the moment, where the government are jumping onto councils where they're seeing delays or shenanigans going on, and they're taking planning powers away from them. So what would be the risk of us going into a 2-month delay here? Well, one of the obvious ones is that the government are going to say, well, you can't do it, so we're going to do it for you. There's another one which Councillor Linden has just voiced, which is the prospect of developers looking at this as a bit of a giveaway. You might dismiss 2 months, but 2 months for a developer is gold. Thank you very much. They'll like that. On the other hand, I do understand where Councillor Newport is coming from, and we could really do with that extra time to scrutinise. On that, when we had the MPPF revision in 2024, there's a question for officers. Did we ever consider a plan B? Because this was totally foreseeable. And it is something that I'm a little bit concerned about, that we are now in this situation, which we knew was coming, because there was a shortage of specialists to be able to produce these reports. And I can remember when I was sitting on the bench in this very committee, that it was something that we were concerned about at the time. And so I'm just a little bit concerned that we are now in this situation and we have created our own risk. As Councillor Linden has voiced, we could blame whoever, but it's not going to achieve anything. We are where we are. So I personally think the risk is high if we do actually introduce a 2-month delay on this, although I do understand the counter-arguments very much so. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Reeves. I think there's one risk that you failed to identify, bearing in mind that Councillor Linden has pointed out that the groups involved are very, have got backing from people who have got knowledge and experience. So one of the risks that perhaps hasn't been identified by yourself is judicial review. If our plan isn't appropriate and solid and we haven't been able to put the work into it, someone could always bring our plan for judicial review. But anyway, I don't know if anyone wants to speak in relation to risks and risk assessments.
Chair. I thought we just discussed how we could interact with the residents. So I'm not sure that you're actually right in suggesting that it's not a risk that I've actually covered, because we've agreed that the residents can write to members and we can filter it and take it from there.
I'm talking about whether the residents may, at some point, or some of them might decide that they don't like what they're seeing, and they could. I'm talking once the plan has gone forward. Councillor Rees, you're off mic, so no one can hear what you're saying.
I thought that was what we'd actually discussed, that we were actually going to be allowing or giving a vehicle for the residents to come forward. And that will make no difference as to whether there's 2 months delay, as to whether they're going to disagree with the Reg 19. If the Reg 19 is actually 2 months late and they still disagree with it, what's the difference?
Yeah, thank you. So, to try and wrap up all those risks that we've talked about. So, yeah, there is, as you say, that there is a risk that you delay the plan by 2 months, and it does potentially lead to 2 months exposure, further exposure to speculative developments. And we can attempt again to mitigate that by asking the planning inspectorate to move forward at pace once we submitted, but there's no guarantee we could do that. But we've outlined in the report that what we think is outweighed by that is the fact that we get the time to make sure that the plan is capable of being found sound, because if it's not, we either face an examination that takes a considerable amount of time. So an inspector could pause our examination and say, actually, you need to go away for 4 months and do some more work, or to the point, if we get to the end of the process, and they may not be based on our decisions, they may be based on the inspector's decisions, or things that have happened due to the course of the process, we could get a judicial review, which again delays the plan process. So those are risks, and so that's why we think that the 2-month extension, which doesn't, is not without risk, but is outweighed by those wider risks. I think the other risk we were talking about was about MHCLG and government intervention more generally. And yes, as you rightly say, members say, we do have one of the older plans in the system, and therefore MHCLG is watching our plan progress, and they regularly ask for updates on our plan progress. And over the last year or so, we've always been able to say that we're making good progress, and we continue to report that to them. There is a risk now, today, regardless of, again, yesterday before this was published, and there is a risk tomorrow that government could intervene in anyone in terms of their plans. I think what we've seen recently is a mix of those interventions. So, for example, with the Basildon plan was published, and so it had a officer recommendation in it that this is the plan, and the direction came from government to say, all right, send it out for consultation and then submit it to us. So that was the nature of their direction. There are other directions in other places where, again, a plan has been presented to committee. Committee has made some decisions on it, and government has added sites into a plan that have been recommended for approval, taken out and added back in again. So those are the sorts of things that government is looking at in terms of intervention. That doesn't mean that we will... What they're not doing is saying we're going to write the plan completely. They're working. They're either asking you to publish something that you've already published and send it for consultation, or they're looking at sites that have already been considered for various reasons. So they're not taking away a piece of paper and bringing you back a plan. They're the levels of that intervention. But as you say, it's a risk now, and it's a risk tomorrow. Does the fact that we're suggesting that we would like an extension expand that risk? Possibly, but does it show that what this council is doing is trying to get a really robust plan in place that's up to date and works for the residents? And I think it shows that, and that is the argument that we would make back to MHCLG, that we are working at pace to progress a plan, and these 2 months will help us make sure we get a sound plan that the planning inspectorate can find sound and that works for our residents. And I think just finally, in terms of timetable, you mentioned timetable. So the local development scheme, which is essentially the timetable document for the plan, I understand that was considered at council previously and approved, and then it was, following the changes, the timetable was considered again by members of the Planning Policy Committee at that time. So the considerations and the risks would have been part of that decision-making process. We also didn't know what the new format would be, so only very recently, in the last few months, has the new plan-making process been able to be started. So we couldn't have started a new plan from scratch until that was clear, and that has only become clear quite recently.
Councillor.
Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Reeves.
Just one point you haven't answered on the NPPF changes that came in late 2024. On the NPPF changes that came in 2024, I know that there was discussion at the time that was going to be very tight on the time schedule then. Was there any discussion at officer level with regards to a plan B, knowing that the timetable would be extremely tight at that point in time, which was over a year ago?
Thank you. So I think as Emma mentioned, obviously we had the consideration for the timetable at that time in terms of determining whether what the process was going forwards. As mentioned, the new plan making system has been emerging over a period of time, and it's only been the early part of this year that that's been confirmed. So in terms of actually being able to make such a decision back then, when the 2024 MPPF was published, there wasn't the information before us to understand what that entire new plan making system was. So in terms of this Plan B, the choice is you try to prepare a plan as we're doing now under the legacy system, i.e. you have to submit by the end of this year, or it was a case of waiting until you had the confirmation of what that new plan making system is. And as I say, it's only been confirmed late part last year, early part this year. So that's obviously meant there are a number of authorities now that you're seeing are only just starting that new process, and it's a 30-month process. So effectively, you wouldn't be seeing a plan for that period at least. So obviously, it would be much longer than where we are now in terms of that, where we're heading in terms of trying to get to the end of this year for submission under the legacy system. So clearly, it's been evolving over time, and a lot's been changing in a very short space of time, which is not unusual for the plan making system or the planning system in general. But clearly, at the time of the decisions being made for this plan, that was the best option we had before us.
Okay, so the simple answer to that is no.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Capon.
Thank you, Chairman. I've ummed and ahed over this for considerable time. We've got a date of the 31st of December. I think as a council we should still be working towards that. But, and I say this, if the government decide, or the Secretary of State decides that they're happy to give us a 2-month extension, it doesn't mean to say we have to use that extension. I would still like us to do it by the 31st of December. I mean, we're intelligent people. If we can't work it out and do it by then, I know it's a tight schedule, and I know we have different political views, but at a time like this, for the district and the residents, we need to come together and sort it out by, pardon me, by the 31st of December. But I still don't see any harm in sending a letter to the government, turn around saying, give us a 2-month extension. If they say no, then we've not lost